My name is Cindy Sternfeld, and I am an Indivisi. I am one of the leaders and founders of this amazing group of ruffians, so named by a man who used to be a congressman. He no longer calls himself that, but we still call ourselves ruffians. I was recently thinking that if I had to sum up the goal of the work we've all been doing for the past 1,288 days, yep, that's how many days since our first meeting, it would probably be that we've wanted to make the expression liberty and justice for all a reality for all, for everyone. A while back, John Lewis had tweeted, "Do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful, be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never ever be afraid to make some noise and to get in good trouble, necessary trouble. We will find a way to make a way out of no way." Today, after the onslaught of news and all the things that have happened, it feels like a really good day for all of us to take Congressman Lewis's advice. While our goal is clear, there's so many things that we have to do to get there, but today we're going to consider two. First, racial justice. There can be no freedom, no liberty, no justice for all unless we seek to correct the injustices of the past and right our course. Today, Dr. Karen Gaffney will share some learning with us so that we might be able to begin our own individual practices of anti-racism. Second, we're going to be talking about the steps you can take so that we can take back our democracy. Many of you have done more than you have ever imagined doing. I know that is true for me. And once again, I am coming to you to say, can you please do more? Can you do more in this fight? I know that many of us lose hope and we become bitter from time to time. And I know that many of us have been tired at times from this struggle. I have learned nothing. If I've learned nothing else, it is that the cure for despondency is to breathe first, and then to take action. But sometimes action needs encouragement. If you need a cheerleader, I swear to God, I am there for you. I will be your cheerleader every day from now until we are done with this fight. And I need a cheerleader, and I know I'm not alone in that. So today, my ask of you is triple. I'm going to ask you to breathe. I'm going to ask you to act, to do your next hard thing, and I'm going to ask you to be an encourager. I wanted to take a moment for us to be able to hear. Charmaine Jordan suggested that we play this song, and I think it's really worth the time it will take to listen, because we do really need to breathe for a second sometimes after weeks like this.
Sometimes you just can't believe the things your eyes see. So much injustice in this life, and it's happening right on your TV screen. So you drop to your knees and you're praying, cause you can hear him saying he can't breathe. And it's all so overwhelming, because you know there's nothing you can do to help him. Continue to breathe, continue to breathe. In times like these, that's what your heart is for. Continue to breathe, continue to breathe. In honor of your brother, that's what your heart is for. There's always someone trying to take someone's power away. The history of the world is violent. Will it ever change? Now we're living in a time when you just can't hide. There's a camera in every hand. It's not elusive, even when they treat you like you're useless. We know what the truth is. Continue to breathe, continue to breathe. In times like these, that's what your heart is for. Continue to breathe, continue to breathe. In honor of your brother, that's what your heart is for. Fight for your life, fight for your life. In the face of a society that doesn't value your life. For the men in your life, for the boys in your life, for your brothers, for your fathers, for the ones that came before us. For the future, for the future, for the future, for the future. Continue to breathe. In times like these, that's what your heart is for. Continue to breathe, continue ask for.
Yeah. So I get all choked up by that. So I think we need Charmaine to get into the meeting, Elaine. I'm not sure if you saw that. Um, so
I don't see her in the waiting room.
okay. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn it over to Deb just to see if she. Oh, there she is. But she came in as Nancy. So I'm going to ask Deb now, as is our practice, to just take us through a little moment that we can take a breath. To you, Deb.
Okay, so that was good advice. So if you're feeling it, why don't you just sit back for a few moments and feel your feet on the floor, especially feel your feet. In these times, it's very easy to feel ungrounded and unstable, but we have a connection to this earth, and that is fortunately through gravity. And gravity is a form of energy that we can draw on, and it can draw us not only to the energy of the earth, but it also gives us energy. So closing your eyes if you feel comfortable, or maybe focusing on one particular thing, or just taking your eyes, lowering your eyelids just a bit, and just feel. Feel two things. Feel your connection to the earth, and feel your breath. And in this connection to the earth and in your breath is an exchange of energy. And it's very easy to get tired and fatigued and exhausted by what we see and witness daily. But there is an exchange of energy, and it is in you and with the earth. And it is for you to be here, for you to activate your purpose. And it is also for you to feel that connection, not only with the breath and the earth, but with all the others, those in this virtual room with us, those of us who are engaged in similar work in trying to right this ship, and for those who need a boost. So our esteemed leader, Cindy, likes to say, we borrow courage from one another. We can borrow that energy from the earth, from our breath, and from each other. So take 3 long, deep breaths, drawing that energy up from the earth, exhaling, making the connection with the others. And then whenever you're ready, then you can start to open your eyes again and rejoin the meeting.
Thank you, Deb. I needed that breath. I'd like now to ask Sharon Hallinan. Oh, I see you. There you are, Sharon. Sharon's going to just give us a moment to honor and remember Congressman Lewis.
And I'm going to share some pictures that Sharon shared with us.
So thanks for giving me this chance. I volunteered to speak up for this because I had the lucky opportunity to get to see Congressman Lewis when he came to Princeton in 2015. These pictures are from that day. I'm going to take just a couple minutes backward to make sure everybody is on the same page of knowing who Congressman John Lewis was. He died this past Friday night at the age of 80. He was really such a force to be reckoned with, a nonviolent force and an impassioned, just wonderful force throughout his life. He was born in Pike County, Alabama. He was the son of a sharecropper. When he was very young, he wanted to be a preacher, and he practiced preaching by preaching to his family's chickens on the farm. So if you ever did get the chance to hear him speak, you know, he was practicing from a very early age as a public speaker. when he was 11, in 1951, he had a chance to take a trip with an uncle to drive up to the north, to Buffalo, New York. And he got to see there how different people's lives were from his own. He got to see that there were these profound differences between how Black America and white America was treated in his time. And he was committed to try to do something about it. He heard Martin Luther King preaching on the radio, and he talked about the social gospel. And that really resonated with John Lewis. And so it was something that he wanted to bring forward in his life. He wrote a letter to Dr. Martin Luther King because he wanted to transfer from a theological seminary where he was going to college to one that was closer to his home but was considered all white. And he didn't have the chance to do that because his parents did not want to engage in the litigation against the governor that Dr. King said it would take. But he did take, he did start making the connections at that point, being this profound civil rights activist that we know of him. He became one of the movement's original freedom riders. He was chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. He was famously beaten on the bridge, the Edmund Pettus Bridge, a bridge everyone these days is really driving to rename that bridge. That was, Edmund Pettus was a KKK leader, and we simply can't have that, in my opinion. So anyway, he had helped cross that bridge in a protest march to try to fight for voting rights for African Americans, and was beaten on the head by the police March 7th, 1965, what became known as Bloody Sunday. And that image of John Lewis being beaten, and he really thought he might die that day, it was something that resonated with so many people. Resonated with our own senator from New Jersey here, Cory Booker. If you ever hear him speak, you've probably heard him tell the story of how that very image showed up on television screens that night really led to his whole life changing, and ultimately his political career as well. So John Lewis had that impact as well. He became a congressman, elected in November 1986, representing Georgia's 5th district. And then during his many, many years of service, he became known as the conscience of Congress. He was someone you could always count on to be doing what was right, and people really looked up to him. I've just seen in the past few days so many Congress people really talking about how they loved working with him, and just that presence that you got from him. In 2011, he got the Presidential Medal of Freedom. President Barack Obama, who was able to place that medal around his neck in such an amazing day. John Lewis wrote a number of books, and 2 of them I have here. This was actually a series of 3 called March. I don't know if you can tell over the image there, but these are what they call graphic novels. So it looks like a comic book, but it's deadly serious. It's all about John Lewis's life in the civil rights movement. And he wrote those books to really try to pass this on to the next generation. And during this speech, this speech that I saw in Princeton, he was receiving an award from the Princeton Theological Seminary, but he was talking about his life and talking about passing these ideals on to the next generation, to the students. And he kept with this refrain. Cindy said it a little bit in the quote she read, this good trouble, necessary trouble. He would repeat that again and again like a chorus in this speech, that you'd be working on things and things weren't going right. You just had to find a way to make a little good trouble, necessary trouble. Susan's got the next picture showing up here. This is a reception after the speech, and this is my daughter in the front of the picture with her long hair and the white shirt, and you could see him kind of reaching out. He did that with a number of the young people there. You see he had all these grown-ups around him, all very nice, glad he posed with so many people with so many pictures, but he wanted to talk to the next generation. So he really reached out and drew Gina in, and I don't know if the other pictures are available there, but he signed her book. She had the March book. He brought her right next to him and signed the book. And I was not close enough to hear their conversation. But I could tell from that interaction and the other interactions, it was so important to him to reach the next generation and to get to motivate people to carry this forward. When he was giving this speech, he was 75 already. He surely knew he couldn't last forever, although with his energy, you might have thought he might have. But he said that it was his mission while he was advertising these books and going around the country. He wanted to teach another generation of young people, not just in America, but around the world, to stand up, to be brave, to be courageous. And when you see something that is not right, you make a little noise. And then he gave another speech in Princeton a couple months after that at the Hun School, where the whole school was assigned those March books I just held up. They all had to read those over the summer. And then John Lewis came to speak to them. And he said, from time to time, you have to find ways to make it real, to germinate the issue, to educate your neighbors, your friends, or an entire country. So be not afraid, be bold, stand up, and speak out. That's what we did in the American Civil Rights Movement, and we brought about a nonviolent revolution, a revolution of values, a revolution of ideas. And then one more thing that he said at the end of the speech that I got to hear, he said, the sheriff who beat me up said I was a troublemaker. Oh, excuse me, I said it wrong. My mother and father raised me to be holy. And then the sheriff who beat me up said I was a troublemaker. They both had it right. I was a holy troublemaker. That's what this country needs more of today. I want you to move out of here and live a life of holy troublemaking. So Cindy, you said you need some inspiration. I think we can all take that inspiration as well. Let's all go be holy troublemakers.
Thank you, Sharon. That was beautiful. And I'm all for that. Who's up for being a holy troublemaker? Let me put your hand. Thank you so much, Sharon. Today, we made some decisions about our meeting. Typically, we would be doing a meeting that's solely about getting out the vote. If you've been hanging around for the last few years, that's what we do from May to November. But we can't, because we needed to take a break. We needed to take a moment and do some learning and some connecting around what's happening in our country and how we get to have it a different way, how we get to be a part of a change that needs to happen. I got to meet Karen Gaffney, gosh, I don't know when it was. It feels like it was before COVID. I don't know anything. Just before COVID, Karen gave a talk with our Indivisible group as a springboard about anti-racism. She wrote this amazing book, which I had somewhere on my messy desk until about a minute ago, called Dismantling the Racism Machine, which I've read, and I can't say enough about it. It's great for the work that we want to do. And now I'm participating in a class with Karen that she's offering. I am so happy and delighted that Karen was able to accept our invitation to share with us her wisdom today. And I encourage all of you to get involved with the Hunterdon Anti-Racism Coalition so that you can be an active part of this as well. Karen is a professor at Delaware Raritan Valley Community.
DC.
Thank you so much. And sorry about that. And I think that you're really going to enjoy this. I do want to let everyone know once again that we're recording this session today. And when you go into breakout rooms, nothing will be recorded. So just so that you know, if you're a person that doesn't want to be on screen ever, you can shut off your camera. But once you go into the breakout rooms, that will not be shared beyond that breakout room. I don't think I've forgotten anything else, but if I did, you'll let me know. Karen, welcome. Thank you for coming. I turn it to you.
Super. Thank you so much. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you so much to Indivisible, Lambertville, New Hope. So I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully I can make this happen. I'm gonna get rid of a few things here. Alrighty, so you should be able to see my screen right now. Does that look okay, Cindy?
It does. Sorry, I was muted. Yeah.
Super, thanks so much. So I'll just say a little bit more about my background. Obviously, some of you certainly know me and are currently working with me in a variety of different capacities, which I really appreciate. I've been in the English department at Raritan Valley Community College for many years. I just finished my 17th year there. I'm also the author, as Cindy mentioned, of Dismantling the Racism Machine, a Manual and Toolbox. And that book is the foundation for the kind of work that I've been doing in these workshops and in other arenas. And so if you aren't part of a workshop and you're interested in exploring these ideas more, I hope you'll consider checking out the book. The publisher, Routledge, is for the month of July offering 20% off all of their books, and that's at routledge.com. My website, dividednolonger.com, also has lots and lots and lots of resources. It has my own blog that I write, but it also has links to articles and videos and all kinds of sources related specifically to issues of race and racism. And finally, I'll just mention on my website, I'm doing a couple of different workshop series right now, and one through the Summit Public Library is recording them on Zoom. And so if you're interested in sort of seeing what I'm doing in that workshop series, you'll find a link to those. We've only had 1 week so far, but you'll see an ongoing link to that series if you go to my website and click on the tab for presentations and just scroll down there. I will mention that we're going to have some discussion, and so if you are not too familiar with the raise hand feature, just keep in mind that you can click on the participants button that was mentioned earlier, and you'll find the raise hand feature there. So I do hope to have a little bit of conversation and discussion with you before we go into the breakouts. Then obviously in the breakouts, you'll have plenty of opportunity for discussion. And then after the breakouts, I'll ask someone from each breakout group to just give one highlight for what they focused on. Okay, so, and I will post a couple of things in the chat so that you have access to it before the breakouts. All right, so just to say a little bit about the work that I'm going to share with you today, I tried to create something a little bit different for today based on my observations about what is happening right now and in our country. And so the workshops that I focus on are mainly about myths that white people are taught that perpetuate white supremacy. And so what I'll present today is related to that, but it is not repetitive of that. So if you're in any of my current workshops, what you see today will be new. So I am trying out these ideas, and I'll be really curious to see what you think. Okay, so let's get started. All right, so obviously the Black Lives Matter movement has gotten a lot of recent attention after the horrific police murder of George Floyd and a series of other murders, some by the police, some by white vigilantes. And so we certainly heard about the Black Lives Matter movement for many years. And what the intent of this movement always was to emphasize that word too, right? That Black Lives Matter too. But for a long time, it seemed like white people were hearing this, right? The word only, that they were hearing only Black Lives Matter. And so for some time, there was a lot of resistance to this movement by white people who felt like that they were being targeted and left out. And so we've seen a bit of a shift now, which is, I think, really noteworthy. So over the past month or so, there's been some research done that reveals how polls are showing an increase, a significant increase in white support for Black Lives Matter, and an increase in white recognition that the police disproportionately use violence against Black people. We also are seeing, as you may know, and as you may have, participated in, we see white people are participating in Black Lives Matter protests throughout the country at significant rates. There have been protests in every single state in the entire country. And so I think it's important to, for me, at least, it's important to think about the question of what is going to sustain this work. And so we often see, a flurry of activity, a flurry of concern, especially by white people when there's a particular incident. But then that flurry often dies down. And so what I'm especially interested in is to think about what will sustain white people in particular with this. And here's an image of a recent protest that included white protesters who really were focusing on the danger of white silence. Okay, so since this is a predominantly white group in a predominantly white area of New Jersey, I wanted to focus on the question of how can white people stay engaged in a sustained fight for racial justice. And what I decided to do is I have a couple of quotes from very, very recent articles, and I'll put the links to the articles in the chat if you want to check them out. And I'm interested in a couple of themes that emerge here that I hope can become a foundation for your conversation in your breakouts. So I'm going to read both of the quotes that I'll show you in a second, and then I'm going to ask you to use the raise hand feature just for like a moment to share what your thoughts are about what are the main ideas that seem to be significant in these quotes. So here's the first one. And this is by, as you'll see, the former mayor of Minneapolis. So she wrote, as the mayor of Minneapolis from 2014 to 2018, as a Minneapolis City Council member from 2006 until 2014, and as a white Democrat, I can say this: white liberals, despite believing we are saying and doing the right things, have resisted the systemic changes our cities have needed for decades. We have mostly settled for illusions of change. These efforts make us feel better about racism, but fundamentally change little for the communities of color whose disadvantages often come from the hoarding of advantage by mostly white neighborhoods, end quote. And here's the second one. And again, the question I'll ask you in a moment is, what are the main ideas that seem significant to you here? Okay, and here's an article, a quote from Erin Aubrey Kaplan in her recent op-ed. The burgeoning new white consciousness about Black lives, though significant and encouraging, is not an ending but a beginning. Racism is a form of convenience in the sense that it's designed to make life easier for its beneficiaries. So is white privilege, the phenomenon of not having to think about the costs of oppression or about Black people at all. Anti-racism requires the opposite: engagement. You'll notice I did do a little bit of bolding in these just to kind of emphasize some of the language that I thought was especially important. But I'm going to just pause and ask you again this question: what are the main ideas, or one main idea, that you think is significant in what you see here? So I'm just going to ask you to take a moment to unmute yourself and to, I realize that I don't want to mess up my screen sharing, but I would like to see the.
You can unshare, Karen, and then share again. That should work out.
Or actually, Karen, just hit exit full screen up in the top right.
Oh, there is the thingy. Okay, sorry.
And then you should be able to navigate around below.
Okay, beautiful. Sorry, it was on the bottom before, now it's on the top. Okay, and I'm not blocking the view of the quote with my participant list here, am I?
Nope.
Okay, perfect. So anyway, sorry about that. I'm still learning about Zoom. So by the time I teach with Zoom in the fall, I should be ready to go. So again, the question is, what's one main idea that you think is significant in these quotes? And why don't you take a moment to go to the participants button, click on that, and then you'll see the raise hand feature. So if you just have a comment about this question, then we're ready to go. So Alicia, what do you think?
The first quote about the illusion of change versus not really going into the systematic changes is really pretty striking, you know, and it's just all this awareness that allows me to better understand what that is. I mean, conceptually I understood it, but makes me really think a little bit more about what really needs to change and how would we do that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Alicia. So I see a hand from Sparky Morrison. So go ahead and unmute yourself and share your thoughts.
I'm Sparky. Cordon of advantage by a mostly white neighborhood. I live in a very white, affluent neighborhood. And I'm thinking we moved here because of the school district. And my children had excellent education. And I'm not that far from Philadelphia, which has dismal education. And it has to do with real estate taxes and how the schools are supported.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Absolutely. And it's a complex, network of issues that impact all of that. Great. How about one more comment about this slide? Is there anyone else who wanted to chime in there?
Raise your hand.
How about Sharon Hallinan?
Yes, I was thinking about the neighborhoods too, the hoarding of advantage by mostly white neighborhoods. An issue that's been of interest to me for a long time is affordable housing and how we have these, wide gaps of availability of housing and how that tends to further and further separate us racially as communities, and that's just not really healthy for a society.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, keep these ideas in mind, and we're going to take a look at just 2 more quotes before we move into breakouts. So here's another statement. Again, these are all from very recent articles. I'll be posting the links in the chat so you can look at the full article if you're interested. Courtney Martin tells us, quote, "Let us be different this time around, white friends. Let us move beyond the dog-eared pages and the Instagram posts and find ourselves so in love with the feeling of being a part of something larger than us, something that decenters us and restores our own humanity in the process, that we can't not show up. Let anti-racism become not a side project, but rightfully intrinsic to our own survival." Okay, and then finally, a quote from Dr. Stephanie Rose Spalding. "It is absolutely too late for you to be an ally. At this moment in history, as we move to abolish racism, it calls for you to either be an accomplice or completely get out of the way. When white people come to the realization that their personal investment and their own humanity is on the line, white people will begin knowing what to do in this work. Please take the words of Lila Watson to heart. Quote, "If you have come to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up in mine, then let us work together." Unquote. Okay, so there's a lot here. There's some very provocative quotes. And I'm going to ask you the same question again. And if you can use the raise hand feature again, that would be great. I'd love to hear from some people who haven't chimed in yet. The question is, what is one main idea that seems significant in these two quotes? So let's start with Naomi and then go to Lisa. So if you could unmute yourself, Naomi.
That already. Okay, there you go. Thank you so much, Karen. This is already extremely enlightening. And I've done a lot of anti-racism work, a lot of trainings. I've trained people myself in it, and I'm still learning so much. And the part that really grabs me is about being an accomplice and, you know, like sticking our necks out when it's difficult and knowing how to do it. And I do have a specific question, but this might not be the time for it. Do you want me to wait or shall I ask it now?
Why don't you say what it is and then we'll figure it out.
Okay, in being an accomplice, you know, sometimes it, not sometimes, it always requires us to intervene, speak out, say something, take risks, risk looking or sounding, you know, like making mistakes. You know, the whole white fragility thing is, you know, oh, I don't know, I'm uncomfortable. So getting uncomfortable. So in a recent exchange with someone who is a good person, but so steeped in privilege that she just has no idea, but is kind of open to learning and started to get comfortable enough in talking to me about it that she revealed some, you know, in her words, used some tropes where I almost like jumped over and like wanted to strangle her. But of course I had to maintain my own composure so I could interact with her in a way that would be helpful and move our mission forward. And I want to talk about when it's, you know, the time in your discussion, how to deal with moments like that so we don't screw them up. Because it's not about us, like maybe I don't care if I look stupid, but I don't want to do something that's going to cause someone to go more into their prejudices and say, see, this is really what it's all about. So
great. So thank you for that question. I think that's really critical. It's that fundamental question of when and how to deal with people who are resistant to this kind of work, and what can you say that will actually make progress, and what might you do that inadvertently backfires. And so this is great. Let's keep this in mind. And this may come up in some of your breakouts, I suspect. I'm sure you're not the only person with this question. And then we'll revisit this right after the breakouts when we come back together. So thank you so much for that. So let's hear from Kelly, I'm sorry, Lisa. Lisa, then Kelly.
Hi. You know, what really sticks out to me in these two quotes is especially the one where people need to realize that my life and my safety is equal to yours. So if I'm okay, if I'm safe, that means that you can be okay and that you can be safe. And so we have to, and I guess obviously, you know, people live in their silos, right? And I don't know what's going on in Brooklyn. I don't necessarily know what's happening to people in Albany or in Des Moines, but I think that's just really what stuck out to me, that, you know, really we're it's all a circle. We're all together, and we need to realize that.
Thank you so much for that, Lisa. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so last we'll hear from Kelly.
So one of the things that I've heard in the past couple months that really struck me hard was, and that I see lined up here in terms of being an accomplice, is black people didn't cause racism and aren't the ones who perpetuated it. It's white people's problem by and large, that we're the ones that as a group have to fix it. So it's kind of, you know, when we look at our black friends and say, how can we help? What do you need me to do? I've heard back, we need you to fix, you know, collect your own. And so I think that kind of lines up with what we heard earlier about how to discuss with people. The best way to be an ally or to be an accomplice, I think, is to work within our own community, and advocate for that and be loud and not just, you know, stand behind and let the black people do the work. So we need to do the work. And I think that's really, we've known that, but to hear it put that way, you know, that she said, we can't fix this. You guys can fix this. And that's the only way to, that really struck me quite hard to have it presented that way. So.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. So I hope that I've started to plant a couple of seeds here. So I'm gonna show you first the 2 questions that I'm gonna ask you to discuss in your breakouts. Then I'll stop sharing my screen. I will put both the links to these 4 articles if in the future you want to check them out, plus the 2 questions in the chat. And if I do that before you go into the chat, as we figured out earlier in our little practice, they should stay in the chat while you're in the breakout. So we're gonna hope that that works. So under this umbrella of how can white people stay engaged, I just have to keep moving on my little screens here. Okay, one question that I would like for you to talk about in your breakouts is, what is one specific thing you will do to stay engaged in the fight for racial justice? And then second, acknowledging that the quotes really emphasize the importance of seeing racism as systemic and not just as a series of isolated events. The second question is, how will you focus on racism as systemic and not as isolated events? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I will put, so hold on one second here. I'm gonna put all 4 of these links right here in the chat. And so if you want to take a picture of that, if you want to copy and paste that somewhere, whatever you want to do, if you want to you know, have access to that later. There is a saved chat that I think would be, actually, I'm not sure if that's available to everyone or just the co-host. But anyway.
Erin, I can certainly pull those out and we can put them on the website or in a newsletter afterwards.
Perfect, perfect, excellent. And then here are the questions you just saw, okay? So what is one specific thing that you will do to stay engaged in the fight for racial justice? And how will you focus on racism as systemic and not as isolated events? So these are the 2 questions I'm asking you to talk about in your breakout groups. And we decided that you'll have 15 minutes. I know that's not a ton of time, but you know, this is really about just kind of starting the conversation. It's obviously not about finishing it. What I'd like to ask you to do is there'll be just a couple of people in your group, maybe 5 or so people. If you could just very, very quickly, don't let this be the focus of your 15 minutes, identify someone who can just help facilitate the conversation and who would be willing to be the person to report back to the full group one highlight from your breakout room. So we have lots of breakout rooms. If we're going to hear from all the breakout rooms, then we need to make that reporting back fairly quick. So we're asking, just pick one highlight from that discussion. And when you begin your discussion in the breakout, just a little reminder, take a moment to introduce yourselves. Don't, again, spend 15 minutes on that, but just a quick, you know, name check-in so everyone in the room knows who everyone is. And what I'm going to try to do, I haven't experimented with this before, is I'm going to try to briefly pop in to as many of the rooms as I can. Just ignore me unless you have, you know, a burning question. And I'm just kind of popping in and popping out. So are there any major concerns before we start doing this?
So let me say, as I put people into the breakout rooms, we have 2 people here who have dialed in. And so I know that those phone numbers duplicate with their visual log on, but I don't know who they are. So you may see yourselves moved around a little bit as I balance the rooms at the start of it. Please unmute yourself so that you can talk quietly, at least talk in your breakout rooms. And Karen, are you ready for them to go?
Yeah, go for it.
All
So
right.
15 minutes and you'll have a little timer.
Here you go. Hi there.
Hi, so we're, if you could put me in number 4.
There is no number 4. I'm putting you in number 5.
Oh, okay.
Did it not give you a message?
There we go. You probably can't get stuck there in cyberspace.
Right.
Okay, so I know we don't have a lot of time. Cindy, I did just text you to clarify what our hard stop is, so just let me know. And so what I would love to do is if each breakout room could have their facilitator or one person say just, one highlight of your conversation, and we'll just try to move through them relatively quickly. And I do have some comments to try to sort of connect some dots here, which also goes back to the earlier question that we had. So I don't know if you remember what breakout room you were in. I can call them out, but if you don't remember which number you had, then it's not going to be very helpful. So if we want to just kind of do this a bit more.
I can tell you that. Hang on.
Okay, so if breakout group 1.
So that had Nancy Bolter and Olga in it, among others?
Okay, I think that'd be me.
There you go.
Okay, so, gosh, I'm just looking at everybody. Okay, so one of the things we did, people contributed what they're doing in their lives to keep the conversation going. But one of the things we kind of came around to, a gentleman in our group pointed out that education keeps people separated, and people are never going to live in the same communities or anything because of the systemic divisions. And I said, it kind of comes back around to looking for candidates who support change in this area and talk about it and vote,
Are we okay? I don't know if I've frozen or if
No, you're good.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, wonderful. Nancy, thank you so much. So let's move on to group number 2.
Which had Cindy Yan, among other people?
Hi, so Kathleen Nash and I were the only ones that participated. We had 2 other individuals, but they were muted and did not unmute. So Kathleen and I discovered we both have connections to Randolph, Massachusetts, but other than that, we discussed specific things that we would do. We think in our own personal lives, I know for me, and Kathleen agreed, is just confronting when you see something and when you hear it, rather than saying, well, I don't want to make somebody else feel uncomfortable or I'll feel uncomfortable challenging them on that. I think specifically what I think is important is that we call people out on it. You don't have to be a jerk. You don't have to be confrontational. You can simply be respectful and say, I disagree with you. I think, you really should rethink that. One of the examples I use is, and it makes me crazy, is when you're talking with a friend, somebody that you know very well, and all of a sudden they drop their voice and talk about an African American person or a Black person or something that they're going to relate something to you that obviously they feel uncomfortable other people are overhearing. Well, then don't tell me about that. So just things like that. And specifically, Kathleen, she raised was that this whole issue with policing. I think she lives in Pennington. She was saying they're putting together a community review board of the police. And I was discussing how in Lambertville, we're concerned about the SROs in our schools, in our 2 schools, and actually 4 schools, and how we want to really deal with that whole issue of policing and how it drives racism to a lot of degree. It impacts individual students.
Thank you so much, Cindy. So we're going to move on to group number 3. And if you could just share one highlight, because I do want to make sure we get to all 8 groups.
Cindy Sternfeld.
Okay, we need to really, like the quote, understand that all of our liberation is bound to all of our liberation, and giving people experience in going to education, going to schools, making sure that this is a cultural shift that gets tied to how we teach children. I hope I represented us well.
Thank you so much. So there was no group 4. I'm not sure why, but that's okay. So we're going to move on to group 5.
That was Karen Mitchell's group.
Yeah, so, what we discussed was how difficult it is to explain the systemic nature of racism, and had some discussion about that. And then some of the specific things that people said they were going to do. One of them was really, really simple. And that is when you're filling out a form and it asks for your race, put human, which I thought was really kind of lovely. So I'll leave it there.
Okay, thank you so much. How about group number 6?
Deb Klein and MJ Legere.
Actually,
Okay.
Sharon was our facilitator.
Oh, very good.
All right, so our group had a lot of different things that they were working on, a lot of different struggles that we face in figuring out how to bring more diversity to the different groups that we're in and spaces that we're in. And I just wanted to mention the one person that had an example that I just loved. She works for the Bucks County Audubon Society, and talked about the incident recently with the birding while black issue. And that there's reports really from the Black community that they don't necessarily feel safe in nature. So her organization was going to be trying to pull together different activities and things to bring both Black people into the natural world and help them feel more comfortable there, and then also maybe report to the police in that area and let them know this is not something you should be shocked about. This is not something you should be, answering reports on if you hear this is an activity we're doing.
Okay, thank you so much. So how about group number 7?
Was, among others, Alicia and Shara.
Okay, so we touched on a couple of things already mentioned. Overall, a lot of the folks had focusing in on personal education, so it's becoming more aware of the issues, and in many cases as communities in churches and synagogues, which was good. One other specific example was in terms of in all of the groups people are working in. Zoe had talked about one of the group programs she's in, the community accountability program, raising the issue of increasing the diversity in that group, and then requiring training, so sensitivity training or training in social justice. And that's actually going to happen. They're going to present it to the DA. So helping to really, expand out the learning beyond into all the different areas. So we had several of the others, but that's just one example.
Thank you so much. And finally, group 8.
Susan Shapiro.
I could summarize our theme as naming it. So that could take the form of a neighbor saying all lives matter and just naming why Black Lives Matter. One of our participants on the systemic side is naming the things within her corporation that go beyond the diversity training, which just doesn't work. Naming things that bake in systemic racism, like not paying a living wage. And she's thinking of writing a letter with that list. And then thirdly, naming systemic race, things that we see in front of us to other Caucasians, things that perpetuate it, like a school to prison pipeline. So that naming things.
Excellent.
Having
Thank
the
you.
courage to.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you so much. So I just have another, just a minute. And so I want to just connect a few dots here. I think this has been really some great discussion. So I want to go back to Naomi's question from before the breakout. Essentially, how do you deal with people who seem resistant? So my personal take on this is, if you feel like you are making progress, even if it is incremental progress, then I would say have patience and persist. If you are hitting a brick wall and you've tried a few strategies and it is still a brick wall and there's no change, then that might not be worth your time and effort. There are only so many hours in the day. You only have so much emotional labor to spend on this. And so that would be sort of my 2 cents there. I know there were some conversations about education and children. I would really emphasize that kids are never too young to talk and learn about race, including white children. White teachers and white parents are very reluctant to talk to white children about race. And so I teach a class, a college class on race, and the white students in that class often say, no one's really ever talked to them about these kinds of issues. So I'll just say real quick that there's ample research that shows Black and white children and children of color and Indigenous children know as young as 2 or 3 or 4 years old that our society that bases value on skin color. So they know when they enter kindergarten what the skin color hierarchy is in the United States. And if parents and teachers are not explicitly talking about that and providing some context and some tools to resist that, they're going to absorb it. And so I would think about that. There was some conversation about if you're working for a company or an organization and the leadership is white and resistant to these sorts of issues, what should you do? I would really urge white employees to hold their white leadership accountable. I know that might seem tough and you might feel like you're risking your situation, but you can approach it in a sensitive way. You can bring, maybe have a letter that, several of your colleagues are co-signing, or whatever process you have at your job. But I would really urge white employees especially to hold white leadership accountable. There was some discussion about the police and all the conversations we've been having. I want to point out, I did a 4-part blog series that I know the newsletter reposted, and I really appreciated that. If you did not get a chance to look at that, what I did was I tried to, in an accessible way, explain the concept of what does it mean when we say defund the police? What does abolition mean? I provided a little bit of historical context. I tried to make it very user-friendly and accessible. So if you go to my blog, Divided No Longer, and you kind of go down through my blog posts, you'll see that. And let me know if there's, you have further, further questions about that. And finally, I'll just say that having these conversations, if you are white and you're having these conversations with other white people, you will likely feel uncomfortable. And you have to just acknowledge that, be okay with that, and persist, because this work is so critical. This cannot be yet another moment where there's a frenzy of activity that we then, scale back on. We need to persist. And so I will leave it at that. Don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can email me. I'm at dividednolonger@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter at dividednolonger, and check out my website, dividednolonger.com. So thank you again so much. And I'm going to turn things over to Susan.
Thanks so much for your presentation, Karen. I just posted a link that Indivisible National has. if you want to donate to Black Lives Matter causes and organizations. Karen, I think you might have mentioned a couple of local organizations as well. So if you would just want to post those in the chat, there are lots of ways that you can also help. These organizations are doing fantastic work, and they do need funding in order to keep going. So I just also want to mention something else that Karen said earlier about how our voices matter and how we are a tool for change. And that is, I'm not sure if everyone's aware that New Jersey passed legislation not long ago so that formerly incarcerated people can vote. And that work was done by groups like the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice and another group called All of Us Are None. But it's people like us that were involved in those groups and did the work to get that legislation passed. So some of the things have to be done nationally, but it's really also true that all politics is local, and we need to be aware of what's happening locally and push for local legislation like that. So I do want to invite you to take action with regard to the BLM movement, and also with regard to the upcoming presidential election. I'm going to segue now because none of us, especially our friends of color, none of us can survive another 4 years of the squatter in the White House. So we are going to offer an opportunity for something a little bit different. So I'm going to speak to those of you who regularly come to our meetings. You're very familiar by now with our GOTV toolkit, which we also affectionately call our Fuller Brush toolkit. So if you are not familiar with the GOTV toolkit, it's on our website, and I will post a link to that in the chat when I'm done talking. So what we did, we taught you all these different tools for you to take action, and then we asked you to go ahead and continue to take action on your own with your preferred tools. Well, we're coming up to a very special day, which is July 27th. It's a Monday, and that marks 100 days prior to the election. As of Monday the 27th, we'll have 100 days until the election. So when we think about the fact that our power is in our collective action, we're going to have an opportunity for a collective action. We're going to kick it off with an event where we'll come together and all take action together virtually. So if you've been to a postcard party recently, which are now virtual, it'll be something like that, but we're going to have an inspirational kickoff. We will divide into breakout groups depending on which activity you want to do, whether it's postcarding, letter writing, phone banking, or texting. And then we'll announce at the end the total number of actions that we have taken so that you can feel the impact of our collective action. You do need to register in order to attend this meeting. So I will also post a link to that in the chat. But if you visit our website, again, there is a link there. And speaking of collective actions, I'm going to see if I can bring up our a website post on the actions that we have taken so far. So I'm going to share my screen, and I just want to show you there's a place where as you're taking action, you can post that. And so here we go. So if you're here and you're on our website, here's our GOTV toolkit that I mentioned. Here's where you log your volunteer hours, and here's where you view our progress to the goal. So I'm wondering if I click on this, I have to get, oh, okay. So can you see the pie chart? I'm sharing that, right? So you can see all the number of hours that have been logged to date. Our goal is to get to 2,500 hours. And you can see we've got about 265 so far. And a lot of those are with admin tasks. A lot of it is postcard. That's very popular. We have some people that are going to do some poll volunteering. So please, I know that this is a really active group and you're doing a lot of things. I had to be goaded in order to log my hours, but I finally did that. So please remember to log your hours. You saw on that link that postcards have been very popular and they are very effective. Olga, can you tell us what campaigns are available now and how people can get their hands on some postcards so they'll be ready for the 27th?
Yep, I'm here. So we have already written or committed to write 10,000 postcards to voters, which is incredible. And one thing I want to say is we want to make sure that we write the same number of postcards to New Jersey voters and Pennsylvania voters. So we want to spread that goodness around. And we just got these ones for Pennsylvania. For Anne Marie Mitchell, who's running to represent New Hope and environs in Harrisburg. Harrisburg desperately needs the legislature to go blue. So these are the ones that are there now. We're also looking to do some statewide GOTV for PA. We still have some New Jersey cards that you can get from Sharon. And we have been doing the Reclaim Our Vote postcards to underreached folks in key states. So how do you get the postcards? Just ask me or Sharon, ask me on Slack, ask me on Facebook, ask me through info@indivisiblelnh.com and that'll be forwarded to me. So I'm pretty much around. So if you want postcards, you will get a packet with your name on it on Sharon Hallinan's porch in Lambertville, and you could pick them up there. That's it.
Great. Cindy, can you talk a little bit about the video, the GOTV video that you created and the training that's coming up?
Okay. I thought it was going to be Deb, but in the interest of time,
I don't see Deb here.
She's there somewhere, but we made these videos. Did anybody see any of the videos we made about why voting's important? Show me a thumbs up if you've seen any of them. Okay, they're on our website. You can get links from our website. We want as many people as possible to make those videos. Some of you are thinking, I don't know how to make a video. What will I say? Well, Tuesday night at 6:30, we're going to have a write your script so you can make your video workshop. So that will be Tuesday night, 6:30. And I believe that we're going to have a link on our website, but I'm going to try to also, there's also a link on Facebook. That's it. Did I forget anything, Deb Klein? I guess I did not. I hope you'll come Tuesday. I know there's about 6 or 7 of you who are definitely coming.
Deb gave you a big thumbs up.
Okay, good.
Great. I just posted the link to that here. I think that's about all I have. We might have been going to, we've got another minute or 2 left. I'm continuing to post to the chat the links I talked about, and I think we were also maybe going to talk about some other things that people have done. Oh, right, and Alicia, contest. Sorry, Alicia.
Okay. Yep, I was muted. Sorry. So in order to help get the creative side, which I think is the right side of the brain, going and to spark some excitement, we're going to kick off an ILNH Get Out the Vote art contest celebrating 100 days to November 3rd. So there's going to be 4 categories. So chalk art, sculpture and rocks, fine art, and illustration and comics. There'll be 4 age groups: under 10 years old, 11 to 21 years old, over 21, that's all to most of us. And then the 4th category is special. So anybody where this will be their first time voting for the president for any reason, whether you've become a new citizen, whether you've been released from prison, whether you've just registered and you're going to be 18, or whether you just became woke and feel like it's an important thing to do. Oh, what happened? There we go. Let me go back. So that's the 4 categories. I'm trying to move the pictures so I can see this. The contest details. They'll be sent in as digital pictures to me, and there's my email, and this will be up on the website and in Facebook. The entries will be due by midnight, July 25th. Yes, it's a very short time, but we want to get quick creative juices going. Please include your name, your age, phone, and your email on your submissions. If you're going to submit for sculpture, take a couple of views of your sculpture of the 3D-ness so we can see the whole thing. If you feel like saying why you were inspired or what your art means, you can include that. It's not necessary. And then the winners, the art will be posted on our website, and then the winners will receive ILNH swag of their choice from our inventory, or several things, so several categories. So we're hoping to, you know, engage your whole self in this get out the vote process. So, yay. And back to Susan or Cindy to close out the meeting, or if there's any questions.
So all I'm going to say is it's 4:30. Never let it be said that we waste a minute of time.
Wait, did you want to give Shara Durkee a second?
Yeah, Shara Durkee. Shara Durkee. Yes, where are you?
Oh, I'm right here.
Okay.
Somewhere.
Shara, I just posted the link to your meeting so you can refer to that in the chat.
Yes, that is what I wanted to mention. The Civil Rights Group, we haven't had a meeting in a while. We're going to try our first Zoom meeting tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Cindy Yan and I will be there. Some people have responded, and we want to talk about where we're going from here, what we want to focus on in terms of legislation to support, actions that we want to get involved in, ways that we want to educate ourselves. So if you are available, 6:30 tomorrow night, it's on the website, it's on the Slack general and civil rights channels. I don't remember, I think I put it on Facebook. So we'd love to have you just hop on and join us tomorrow at 6:30, and please share your ideas.
Cindy Yan has her hand up. Did you need to ask a question, Cindy Yan? No? Okay.
So I want to thank everyone who helped make this meeting a meeting again. Karen Gaffney, thank you so much. Susan, the work you've been doing around this GOTV July 27th kickoff is amazing. I'm just going to tell you that July 27th happens to be my birthday. And I would love for my birthday to have so many people join that call that we have to buy the next higher level of Zoom subscription. I would love us to have 100, 150, 200 people. So I don't know, that might be unrealistic, but I hope to see you all on the 27th. You are rock stars. Let's keep encouraging each other. Let's keep hanging out there and doing this work. It matters. It's important. So thank you all. We're going to leave this Zoom open for a while, because if you want to go get yourself an iced tea or a glass of wine or whatever it is, we're going to have our little Bell's happy hour right here, right now. So we're going to leave it open. But thanks everybody for coming. You can unmute yourselves now. Thank you, Elaine, for Zoom wrangling, and Karen for setting up, and everyone that did a thing today.